Morning, everybody, and welcome to a fantastic business spotlight. We're going to interview a very interesting lady today and business owner, a business which has been going for 13 years. Fazane, tell us about your business.
So I'm the founder of Fazane Fox production agency, and we offer complete end-to-end service for startups, retailers, and more established brands. Working with them right from sketchbook to hanger. So we do everything for our brands and clients. So design, product development, sourcing, technical, and then we get their garments and products made in factories in the UK, Portugal, China, Turkey, and Sri Lanka at the moment, but we are expanding. So that's
Brilliant,
it very simply.
brilliant. So you do the whole supply chain for fashion garments or general garments, or what just tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so any product really. The only product that we don't do at the moment is like leather handbags and shoes. So we will work on men's, kids, baby, sportswear, lingerie, socks, tailoring, bridal. We've done you name it. We've worked on most categories. So there's not an awful lot we can't do. But yeah, most recently we've worked with people that have got brand new ideas and brand new products to market. So things with patents or registered design or things that have not been seen before that we really have to engineer and develop and get ready for market for them.
It's brilliant. And you were telling a story about a T-shirt.
Yeah, so
Tell the guys about that.
So we've recently helped a young, I think he's the youngest entrepreneur in the UK, actually. He's 10 years old. He's neurodivergent, and one day he was thinking in his bedroom, wouldn't it be nice if I could get some clothing that A, didn't irritate me, because typically like the seams will irritate the children. Labels are itchy and scratchy. But also he was thinking like his favorite toys are fidgets. They're called poppets. They're like little plastic, basically like bubble wrap, but in plastic, and you pop them to help with fidgeting, if you feel nervous, that kind of thing. And he was wondering whether he could build that into a t-shirt, so that it was all in one. So he had a rough idea of his design. He originally did approach another supplier. Obviously, his family were helping him. He wasn't, running around 10-year-olds sourcing all these supplies by himself. And they really didn't do a good job. They didn't understand the brief. They were not transparent at all about pricing, and the development work that they'd done was just not suitable for the product, and it wasn't even, what they developed wasn't within the price constraints, because the main thing they wanted was that this garment was going to be accessible to everyone, so it couldn't be really expensive. So they came to us afterwards on a recommendation. I get a lot of business through recommendations, through LinkedIn, or just from the years I've been in the industry and all the networking and stuff I do. So he came in with his idea, and we took that initial sketch and idea. We found a much more suitable fabric that was really soft and more cost effective, because obviously I've got suppliers all over the world, and developed the design more so that it would could be made in production. Now, t-shirts are normally just overlocked, and that's just I don't know how to describe it for your listeners. So t-shirts are generally overlocked, but that seam is quite scratchy if you have sensory issues. So we help them to develop like a flat foul seam. Now, no one ever does jersey with a flat foul seam. It's normally done on woven garments, so like a rigid fabric. So a flat foul seam you would usually see on jeans, for example, so down the side. So we actually had to try 3 different manufacturers who couldn't get seam right for us. So we tried it in the we tried two of my suppliers in the UK. They couldn't get it right. We tried it in Portugal. They got it right, but the price was too high. So we took it across to Turkey to get a better cost price for them. And eventually, after about a year of trial and testing, we got the t-shirt right. We had all the pockets made specially, so it was a special specification. We had to have a mold made and worked out how it was going to be stitched into the hem. He was involved in the whole process, so you know, at each stage we like made the first sample and we fitted it, and you know, had him in the office. And at one point we had the fabric specially made as well, and the composition was very important to how it feels on the skin. And we had the first batch of fabric come in, and Max said to me, "Fazane, this fabric doesn't feel right." And I felt it against what I'd sent them, and I couldn't tell any difference at all. It felt exactly the same. So I sent it off to the testing house to test what was actually in the fabric, and they'd slipped some cotton in, and it just amazed me that this little boy could tell that there was like 12% cotton in that shouldn't be in there, and he could feel it. And that just, you know, showed me how important it is that, you know, that the fabric is really soft and that they can actually tell. It was amazing, but we resolved all of that. And as the production was about to be finished, he ended up on This Morning with Paddy McGuinness and Alison, and they'd sold out before I'd even shipped the garment to them. So
wow.
Yeah, so they've got a patent on it. It's you know, fully registered. No one can copy it. And we're already on the second batch now. That's going through production at the moment, and we are working with them to do lots of other products that we could put this fidget toy in, right across the board. So yeah, that's one of the more interesting projects we've done.
That's a fantastic story, and thank you so much for sharing that. I mean, so I know you used to work in the high end fashion industry, but you always wanted to own your own business, didn't you?
Yeah, so yeah, I used to work for a high-end garment supplier. We used to supply to people like Hobbs and Jaeger and M&S and Paul Smith, mostly silk and silk blend clothing. But yeah, I'd always wanted to have my own business. So when I set up my company 13 years ago, I actually started with my own fashion brand. And so set that up while I was still working. And after about a year of doing both, I realised that I couldn't, you know, you can't do both. I was travelling all over the world. I was, you know, in China 5 times a year. And so I just thought, you know, I really need to go for it. So I gave up my house, my car, my job, moved in with my parents, which was fun. And yeah, started working from my parents' kitchen table initially.
Brilliant.
And then after about 6 months, I realised that I wasn't really making any money. I wasn't very good at the marketing side of things. So although, you know, I'm a designer and I can produce and I've got all of these contacts, actually I didn't really know how to get into many retailers. And this was pre-Instagram days, so I couldn't even whack it on Instagram like a lot of brands do now. And it was more high end, so people weren't really buying, you know, a £300 dress online at this point. So I won a competition with ASOS Marketplace. I was actually stocked on there at the time, and a company called Fashion Angel in London, who specifically mentor fashion startups. And I won that competition because they felt my brand had the most potential for growth. So within those 6 months, we identified that actually, you know, I needed an extra income stream to help me employ somebody to market the brand. So obviously, with all of my background in garment supply, they were like, there's definitely a market here for you to help other brands do what you've done. So I started doing that as like a consultant, and it just completely took off. So much so that when my son was born 8 years ago, I closed the label down because I just felt, you know, you've got to go where the business is going. It wasn't my original dream to have a production agency, but that's just the way it went. So yeah, we the interest was amazing. You know, I've worked with over 100 brands now. We've got employees, a lovely office. I'm not at the kitchen table anymore. Yeah, so it's not what I set out to do, but you know,
Brilliant.
that's
And
business, isn't it, really?
yeah, and what's been the biggest learning along the way?
Actually running a business. So yes, I've got experience in fashion, garment supply, but I didn't really know how to run a business. So in the beginning, I didn't even have a business plan. I didn't really know anything about cash flow or forecasting or VAT or anything like that in the beginning. And I've just had to teach myself through making a lot of mistakes and losing a lot of money, unfortunately. Yeah, I mean, I think I wish I would have done like a business course as well as the fashion. So, because I would probably be retired by now if I'd done that. But it's never plain sailing, is it?
No, no, absolutely. So what do you see as the main challenges going forward?
The main challenge for us is cash flow for me is a very hard thing to manage because our gestation period is quite long. So especially with a new product, it might take 6 months to a year and we don't get the bulk of money till towards the end, which is the production side. So managing cash flow all the time is my biggest challenge. And also because we work with a lot of startups as well, they don't understand business either. So I end up having to educate them so that I don't lose money and get them to pay on time. But yeah, we've had a lot of issues with, you know, startups coming and committing to big production runs and then they don't have the money or they don't have the funding when they've signed a contract with us. And yeah, it's the finance side I find very difficult.
That's really interesting. I mean, sort of, and the fashion industry as it is, what kind of state is it in? I mean, we talk about retail and all this kind of stuff. Some bits are doing well, some bits aren't doing so well. So just give us a little synopsis of what's happening in the industry.
It's very good. People aren't buying like they used to. I mean, during COVID, my turnover tripled because people were just sat at home buying stuff online. So we did really well in COVID, but since then, Brexit and the cost of living crisis has really, really affected everything. So people aren't buying so much anymore. They aren't buying so much fast fashion, but that's fine because we've never been interested in doing fast fashion. But the market is just so saturated. There's so many brands out there doing the same thing over and over again. It's very hard for especially startups to stand out. And I think I said before, I've worked with over 100 brands. I would probably say 10 to 15 are still going, which is not great. But I identified that we needed to move away from the fashion because it is so saturated. And I do have competitors, but they don't quite do what we do. Focusing more on these products with a purpose, like the t-shirt, because, you know, people are always going to buy that kind of thing. You know, if they're cutting down on clothing, they're going to, you know, they don't need to buy the latest trend, but that really has a purpose, solves a problem, so people will still buy it. So we're focusing now on more things like that. So we're also developing, for example, a specialist jacket for a huge warehousing company with a built-in harness for all their warehouse staff that you can attach your iPad to, and it flips down when they're working and then it flips back into the jacket when they're not working. So products like that are needed is what we're focusing on in order to survive. And we've also recently developed the world's first eco-friendly water hammock. So, you know, when you go on holiday and you have the plastic linos, they're really bad for the environment. Most people, they pop and then they chuck them away. This is fully biodegradable. It's made of a special mesh that's made from recycled plastics anyway, so it will, you know, last forever. So things like that,
Right.
that are always going to have a need, is what we're focusing on now. Because otherwise, if we didn't adapt and pivot, I don't think we'd survive.
Yeah. No,
The state of the fashion industry.
that's a really important point. Adapt, pivot, move forward. Yeah, that's really interesting. So you mentioned you have a young family. How do you balance your personal life with demands of running a business?
Very difficult. He's 8, so he's quite self-sufficient now, and I share custody with his father. So actually, I have half the week with him where I concentrate on him, and then the other half of the week, you know, I concentrate on my business. But a couple of years, I actually did get really poorly from just doing too much stress, difficult clients, and being that ill really made me, you know, realize that I can't make this business my whole life. I have to take time out for myself. I have to, you know, relax at the weekends, otherwise I'll just run myself into the ground. But the biggest lesson I learned from that was to accept help. So I'm very independent, think I can do everything myself, but you can't. So even though I have staff, I was still very much running the business by myself, and all of the stress was just on me and wasn't talking to anyone about it. So I have a business advisor now, and also a much better accountancy firm that helped me with all the financial side. So it's accepting help, I think. So, you know, anytime anything, I ring him most days, and we chat through things, and yeah.
Cool. Brilliant. Share the burden.
Yes. Yes.
Share the burden. That's the best thing. And finally, what is the best advice you'd give to an 18-year-old you?
Don't do it all by yourself, I think. Yeah. Accept help. You can't do everything alone.
Fantastic. What a fantastic Fazane, brilliant interview. Thank you so much for your time. Really, really enlightening for everybody. Thank you.
That's okay. Thank you.